Now let's begin. Luke McDowell pressed his palm against the bathroom mirror, watching condensation bloom around his fingers. Below, his 6-year-old son Casey sat rigid in the bathtub, knees pulled to his chest, staring at the electric clippers on the counter like they might sprout teeth. "Buddy, it's just a trim. Your hair's getting in your eyes." Luke kept his voice soft, the same tone he used when coaxing Casey awake on school mornings. "No scissors. No scissors." Casey's voice cracked into a shriek that made Luke's molars ache. "I'm not using scissors, see? Just the clippers. Like the barber." "No." Casey scrambled out of the tub, soap still clinging to his shoulders, and bolted past Luke into the hallway. His wet feet left prints on the hardwood. Luke followed him to his bedroom, where Casey had already burrowed under his Batman comforter. Luke sat on the edge of the bed, placing a hand where he thought Casey's shoulder might be. "What's going on? You loved getting haircuts before." Silence. Then a muffled sob. "Casey, talk to me. Did something happen?" The comforter shifted. Casey's face emerged, red and wet. His blonde hair stuck to his forehead in dark streaks. "Promise you won't be mad." "I promise." Casey's small hand reached up and pulled back his right ear. Luke leaned closer, then felt his stomach drop through the floor. A chunk of cartilage missing from the upper curve of Casey's ear. The scar tissue was raised and pink, maybe 3 months old. How had he never noticed? But Casey's hair had been longer then, and kids were good at hiding things when they were scared. "Who did this?" Luke's voice came out steady, but something cold was spreading through his chest. "Grandma Marguerite. At her house. She said I wasn't listening when she told me to sit still. She said cutting it off would teach me to listen better." Casey's eyes were huge. "She said if I told, she'd cut more off next time." Luke pulled Casey into his arms, feeling his son's heart hammering against his ribcage. Over Casey's shoulder, he could see Elsa standing in the doorway, her face drained white. She'd heard everything. That night, after Casey finally fell asleep, Luke found Elsa in the kitchen staring at a glass of wine she hadn't touched. "I need to see it again," she whispered. "Elsa, I need to see what my mother did to my son." Luke led her to Casey's room. Under the glow of the nightlight, Elsa examined the scar with trembling fingers. When she straightened, her eyes were dry but her hands were fists. "I'm calling the police." "And say what?" Luke kept his voice low. "It happened months ago. Casey's terrified. Your mother will say he's lying, that he fell or caught it on something. She'll make him out to be a dramatic kid and us paranoid parents. So we do nothing?" "I didn't say that." Luke walked to the window, watching headlights crawl down their suburban street. "But we need to be smart. Your mother has half the county convinced she's a saint. Church volunteer, Meals on Wheels, the whole performance." Elsa's laugh was bitter. "I grew up with her. I know what she really is. Tell me." She sat at the kitchen table, and Luke poured her a real drink this time. Whiskey neat. She downed half of it before speaking. "My father left when I was 8. After that, Mother became rigid. Everything had to be perfect. The house, my grades, my appearance. If I stepped out of line, there were consequences." Elsa touched her own ear unconsciously. "She never cut me, but there were other things. Locked in the basement for hours. Meals withheld. And the verbal stuff. She could make you feel like the smallest, most worthless thing in the world." "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I thought I'd gotten away from her. We moved 3 states over. I barely called. Then Casey was born and she showed up at the hospital with this huge smile, acting like grandmother of the year. I thought maybe having a grandchild had changed her, or that I'd been too sensitive as a kid." She finished the whiskey. "I was wrong." Luke pulled up a chair beside her. "How often have you left Casey alone with her?" "Just a few times. When I had doctor's appointments or errands. She volunteered to babysit." "God, Luke, I gave him to her." Stop. This isn't on you." He took her hand. "But I need to know everything. Has she ever said anything about discipline? About how we're raising Casey?" Elsa thought for a moment. "She thinks we're too soft. She's made comments about how children today have no respect, how they need a firmer hand. Last month, she said Casey talked back to her when she told him to finish his vegetables. I told her he's 6, they all do that." "What did she say?" "That I was raising him to be weak. That she knew how to handle children properly." Elsa's eyes widened. "You think that's when she did it?" "Probably." Luke stood and paced the kitchen. "She hurts him, threatens him to stay quiet, and gets away with it because she's his grandmother. Because who would believe a sweet old woman could do something that monstrous?" "Luke, what are you thinking?" He looked at her, and in his eyes was something she'd never seen before. Not anger exactly, but a cold calculation that made her shiver. "I'm thinking your mother made a mistake. She thought she could hurt our son and walk away clean. But I'm going to make sure she pays for what she did." He checked his watch. "What time does she expect us for Sunday dinner?" The McDowell house sat on a quiet cul-de-sac in suburban Ohio, the kind of neighborhood where people waved at mail carriers and organized Halloween decorations contests. Luke had moved here for the schools and the safety. He coached Casey's t-ball team and grilled burgers for the block party every 4th of July. He was the guy everyone liked, friendly, helpful, normal. What the neighbors didn't know was that before Casey was born, before the mortgage and the minivan, Luke had been a different person. He'd grown up in Detroit, raised by a single mother who worked doubles at the hospital. He'd run with the wrong crowd as a teenager, learned how to fight dirty in parking lots and alleys. He'd been smart enough to avoid serious trouble, but he understood the language of the streets, how power worked when the law couldn't help you. College had been his escape route. Community college first, then a scholarship to Ohio State for mechanical engineering. He'd met Elsa in a sophomore English class, been charmed by her quiet intelligence and the way she bit her lower lip when concentrating on a problem. They'd married right after graduation, and Luke had deliberately left his old life behind. But he hadn't forgotten it. He spent the next 3 days preparing. First, he called in a favor from Raymond Baker, a friend from his Detroit days who now worked as a private investigator. Raymond owed Luke from a situation years back involving Raymond's younger brother and some drug dealers who needed convincing to forget a debt. "I need everything you can find on Marguerite Myers. 68 years old, lives alone in Columbus. I want financial records, medical history, who she talks to, where she shops. Everything." Raymond didn't ask questions. "Give me 48 hours. Next, Luke visited Casey's pediatrician. Dr. Marina Hill had been treating Casey since birth, and Luke trusted her. He brought Casey in for an ear infection, and when Dr. Hill examined the scar, her expression hardened. "This is a surgical wound," she said quietly, glancing at Casey, who was playing with toys in the corner. "Clean edges. Someone used scissors or a blade. Can you document it? Photographs, measurements, everything?" "Absolutely. Luke, you need to report this." "I will, but I need the documentation first." He met her eyes. "Please." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll have everything ready by tomorrow. But Luke, be careful. If you're planning what I think you're planning, make sure you can live with it." On Thursday evening, Raymond called with his report. Luke listened while standing in his garage, surrounded by tools and half-finished projects. "Your mother-in-law is interesting," Raymond said. "Financially, she's comfortable. Pension from her late husband, Social Security, some investments. Nothing flashy. But here's where it gets weird. She's been buying medical supplies. Surgical scissors, gauze, antiseptic. All from different pharmacies, all cash purchases." Luke's grip tightened on the phone. "She's done this before. Looks like it. I also talked to some neighbors. Off the record, casual conversations. 3 of them mentioned she used to babysit their grandkids, but they stopped using her. Wouldn't say why exactly, just that the kids didn't want to go back. Names. I'll email you the list. But Luke, this woman is careful. She picks victims who can't or won't speak up. Young kids, intimidated easily. She knows what she's doing." After hanging up, Luke sat in his car and thought about Casey's face when he'd revealed the scar. The shame in his voice when he thought he'd done something wrong. The fear that it would happen again. Something broke inside Luke then, or maybe it had been broken since the moment he'd seen the wound. He pulled out his phone and texted Elsa, "Tell your mother we'll be there for Sunday dinner. All 3 of us." Her reply came quickly. "Are you sure?" "Positive. Tell her we wouldn't miss it for the world." Marguerite Myers lived in a pristine colonial on the west side of Columbus, 45 minutes from Luke and Elsa's home. The house was exactly what you'd expect from her public persona. American flag by the door, rose garden in front, a welcome mat that actually looked welcoming. Sunday morning, Luke dressed carefully. Black jeans, a button-down shirt, leather jacket. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw the kid from Detroit staring back. Elsa noticed. "Luke, you're scaring me." "Good. That means I'm doing this right." They drove in silence, Casey between them in the back seat clutching his tablet. When they pulled into Marguerite's driveway, Luke noticed her watching from the window, a smile on her face that didn't reach her eyes. She opened the door before they could knock. "There's my beautiful family. Come in, come in. Dinner's almost ready." Marguerite was a small woman, barely 5'3", with silver hair styled in perfect waves. She wore a floral dress and pearls. She looked like she could be selling cookies for a church fundraiser. Luke studied her as they entered. Her smile was practiced, her movements precise. This was a woman who controlled every detail of her environment. The house reflected it, every surface spotless, every decoration placed with intention, not a single thing out of order. "Casey, sweetheart, come give Grandma a hug." Marguerite reached for him, but Casey shrank back against Luke's leg. "He's shy today?" Elsa said quickly. "Nonsense. He's just being difficult." Marguerite's smile tightened. "Come here, Casey. Now." Luke felt Casey's hand grip his jeans. He placed his own hand on his son's shoulder. "Actually, Marguerite, Casey can stay with me. I think he's feeling a bit overwhelmed." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Marguerite's eyes fixed on Luke with an expression that made him think of something reptilian studying prey. "Of course," she said, her voice sweet as syrup. "Whatever you think is best. Elsa, help me in the kitchen." As Elsa followed her mother, Luke knelt beside Casey. "You okay, buddy?" Casey nodded, but his eyes were locked on the hallway leading deeper into the house. Luke followed his gaze and saw what Casey was looking at, a door slightly ajar, darkness beyond it. "Is that where she took you before?" Casey nodded again, smaller this time. "Don't worry. I won't let her near you." Luke meant every word. Elsa emerged from the kitchen, her face tense. "Mother says dinner will be about 20 minutes. She wants to know if we'd like wine. Tell her yes." "And Elsa," Luke lowered his voice, "stay in the kitchen with her. Don't leave her alone." "What are you going to do?" "Just looking around. Old houses are interesting, architecturally speaking." While Marguerite was occupied, Luke moved through the first floor quickly and quietly. Living room, dining room, study. Everything perfect and lifeless. But when he reached the basement door, the one Casey had been staring at, he paused. It was locked from the outside. Luke pulled a small toolkit from his pocket, another relic from his Detroit days. The lock was simple, and within 30 seconds he had it open. He flipped on the light and descended. The basement was finished but sparse. Concrete floor, exposed beams. And along one wall, a wooden chair bolted to the floor. Restraints attached to the arms and legs. Stains on the seat that Luke didn't want to identify. On a shelf nearby sat the medical supplies Raymond had mentioned, along with something else, a leather journal. Luke flipped it open and felt nausea rise in his throat. Dates, names, descriptions. Marguerite had been documenting her discipline sessions for years. Different children, different punishments. Casey's entry was there, June 15th. Subject, grandson, Casey, age 6. Infraction, talking back, refusing vegetables. Correction, removed portion of right ear cartilage. Subject complied after initial resistance. Successful modification of behavior. There were others. So many others. Some listed by name, some just as subject. Burnings, cuttings, prolonged isolation. All described in the same clinical, detached language. Luke photographed every page with his phone, his hands surprisingly steady. Then he heard footsteps above. "Luke, where are you?" Elsa's voice strained. He closed the journal, replaced it exactly as he'd found it, and climbed the stairs. He relocked the door and pocketed his tools just as Elsa appeared. "Dinner's ready. Are you okay? You look pale." "I'm fine. Let's eat." The dining room table was set with china and crystal, a perfect roast chicken as the centerpiece. Marguerite sat at the head of the table, smiling like a gracious hostess. Luke took the seat opposite her, with Elsa and Casey between them. "I'm so glad you could all make it," Marguerite said, carving the chicken with practiced precision. "We see each other so rarely these days." "My fault," Luke said easily. "Work's been busy." "Of course. Elsa tells me you're doing well at the engineering firm." "Can't complain." Luke watched her hands as she served the food. Steady, controlled. "You've got a beautiful home, Marguerite. How long have you lived here?" 35 years. My husband and I bought it when Elsa was a baby." She glanced at her daughter. So many memories in these walls. Elsa's fork scraped against her plate. Casey hadn't touched his food. They made small talk through the first course. Marguerite asked about Casey's school, made comments about the weather, mentioned her volunteer work at the church. She was a masterful performer, Luke thought. You'd never guess what she kept in her basement. As they finished the main course, Luke set down his fork with deliberate care. Marguerite, I need to ask you something. Of course, dear. When you babysat Casey back in June, did anything unusual happen? The room went silent. Marguerite's smile didn't waver. Unusual? No, nothing I can think of. We had a lovely time, didn't we, Casey? Casey stared at his plate. Because Casey's been having some behavioral issues lately, Luke continued. Fear of scissors, anxiety around haircuts. I've been trying to figure out where it came from. Children go through phases, Marguerite said smoothly. I'm sure it's nothing serious. That's what I thought. Until I saw this. Luke pulled out his phone and showed her the photographs Dr. Hill had taken of Casey's ear. Any idea how that might have happened? Marguerite studied the photos with an expression of mild concern. My goodness. Elsa, did you take him to a doctor? That looks like it could have been a nasty accident. It wasn't an accident, Luke said. And you know it wasn't. Luke, Elsa started, but he held up a hand. Marguerite set down her napkin. I'm not sure what you're implying, but I find your tone very inappropriate. Especially in front of Casey. You're right. Casey, why don't you go watch TV in the living room? Casey bolted from his chair like he'd been released from a cage. Once he was gone, Luke leaned back in his seat. Let's be honest with each other, Marguerite. I know what you did to Casey. I know about the basement. I know about the other children. He pulled out his phone again and showed her photos of the journal pages. I know everything. For the first time, Marguerite's mask slipped. Her eyes went cold and flat, like a doll's eyes. You went through my things. You broke into my private space. You mutilated my son. I corrected his behavior. Something you and Elsa have clearly failed to do. She stood, drawing herself up to her full height. Children need discipline. Structure. They need to understand there are consequences for their actions. My methods may seem harsh to your generation, but they're effective. Your methods are torture. That's a very dramatic word. Marguerite walked to a cabinet and pulled out a bottle of brandy, pouring herself a glass with steady hands. You don't understand because you were raised without proper boundaries. Elsa's told me about your background. Detroit, wasn't it? The rough neighborhoods, the absent father. You turned out fine despite the lack of structure. But most children aren't as resilient. This isn't about structure. This is about you hurting children because you enjoy it. Marguerite laughed, a sound like ice cracking. Enjoy it. This isn't about enjoyment, Luke. It's about necessity. Children are fundamentally wild creatures. They need to be civilized, shaped, broken if necessary. My own daughter required considerable correction before she became presentable. She glanced at Elsa, who had gone very pale. Didn't you, dear? Mother. Don't speak unless spoken to, Elsa. We're having an adult conversation. And there it was, the real Marguerite. The mask fully gone, replaced by something cold and cruel. Luke stood slowly. Here's how this is going to work. You're going to confess to what you did to Casey. And to the other children. You're going to turn yourself into the police. Marguerite actually smiled. No, I don't think I will. You see, Luke, you have no real evidence. Those photographs could be from anything. Children hurt themselves all the time. And my journal. She walked to the basement door, producing a key from her pocket. It's my private property, which you accessed illegally. Nothing in it would be admissible in court, even if you could prove I wrote it. I'll tell them anyway. And I'll deny it. I'm a respected member of this community. I have friends in the police department, in the courthouse. I volunteer at 3 different charities. Who do you think they'll believe? Me? Or you with your suspicious background and your grudge against a sweet old woman? Luke had expected this. Had planned for it, even. You're right. The legal system probably won't help me. So I'm going to make you a different offer. Oh. Marguerite's eyebrows rose. What kind of offer? The kind where you don't hurt anyone else, ever again. Luke walked toward her, and something in his expression made her take a step back. See, I learned some things growing up in Detroit. Things about how to handle people who think they're untouchable. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. Just like you educated Casey. He paused at the basement door. You know what? I think we should all go downstairs. I'd like to show Elsie your special room. Absolutely not. But Luke had already unlocked the door and flipped on the light. Elsa, come here. Elsa stood frozen at the table. Luke, what are you doing? Trust me. Please. She walked to him on trembling legs. When she saw the basement, the chair, the restraints, the supplies, she made a sound like something breaking. Mother, what is this? It's none of your concern. What is this? Elsa's voice cracked like a whip. Marguerite's face hardened. It's a discipline room, where I correct behavioral problems. You used to spend time down there yourself, Elsa. Don't you remember? Elsa's hand flew to her mouth. The basement. You used to lock me down here. I thought I'd imagine how bad it was, but you were a difficult child. Willful, disobedient. Just like your son. Marguerite descended the stairs, her movements precise even now. I did what needed to be done, and I don't apologize for it. Luke followed her down, with Elsa behind him. In the confined space, Marguerite suddenly looked smaller, older, but no less dangerous. You're sick, Elsa whispered. I'm practical. The world is full of broken, undisciplined people because parents are too weak to do what's necessary. Marguerite ran her hand along the chair's arm. I've made sure several children in this community grew up properly. Their parents thank me, even if they don't know the specifics. They don't know you tortured their kids. I didn't torture anyone. I taught them lessons. There's a difference. She looked at Luke. So what now? You going to tie me to this chair? Scare me into submission? I've dealt with worse than you. Luke pulled out his phone and hit a button. Immediately, voices filled the basement. The recording he'd started when they first sat down for dinner. Marguerite's own voice played back. I corrected his behavior. Children need to be civilized, shaped, broken if necessary. I've made sure several children in this community grew up properly. Marguerite's face went white. That's illegal. You can't record someone without their consent. Ohio's a one-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm part of. Luke stopped the playback. And I've got you admitting to everything. The journal, the basement, Casey's ear. All in your own words. For the first time, Marguerite looked uncertain. It still won't hold up in court. Not without. Who said anything about court? Luke's smile was cold. See, I've been thinking about what you said. About how you have friends in the community. How people respect you. That reputation is all you have, isn't it? Your power comes from people thinking you're a saint. What are you getting at? I'm getting at the fact that I've already sent copies of this recording, along with photos of this basement and your journal, to every parent whose child you've ever babysat. To your church pastor. To your volunteer coordinators. To your neighbors. He checked his watch. They should be receiving them right about now. Marguerite lunged for him, but Luke sidestepped easily. She crashed against the wall, her perfect composure finally shattered. You can't. Those are private. You hurt children and kept a torture chamber in your basement. Your privacy doesn't concern me anymore. Luke moved toward the stairs. Come on, Elsa. We're leaving. Wait. Marguerite's voice was hoarse. Please. That's my entire life. My reputation. Everything I've built. Should have thought about that before you cut off my son's ear. Luke paused on the steps. Oh, and one more thing. I also sent everything to Detective Carrie Harmon at Columbus PD. Raymond tells me she specializes in child abuse cases. She'll probably want to talk to you. They left Marguerite standing in her basement, surrounded by the instruments of her cruelty, her perfect mask finally destroyed. In the car, Casey was asleep in the back seat, exhausted from stress. Elsa stared out the window, silent tears running down her face. I should have protected him, she finally said. I should have known. She was your mother. You wanted to believe she'd changed. Luke reached over and squeezed her hand. This isn't on you. What's going to happen now? Now? We make sure Casey gets whatever help he needs. Therapy, support, whatever it takes. And we make sure your mother never hurts anyone again. Will the police actually do anything? Raymond says Detective Harmon is good. She'll investigate. Even if the legal case is shaky, Marguerite's life is over. No one will trust her. No one will let her near their kids. She'll spend whatever time she is left alone and despised. Luke glanced in the rearview mirror at Casey's sleeping face. It's not perfect justice, but it's something. Elsa was quiet for a long moment. Then Luke. Yeah. Thank you. For protecting our son. For doing what I couldn't. We're a team. We protect each other. He turned onto their street. The familiar houses glowing warmly in the dusk. That's what family does. 3 weeks later, Luke was grilling burgers in the backyard when his phone rang. Raymond, you're going to want to hear this, Raymond said. Marguerite Myers was arrested yesterday. Luke set down his spatula. On what charges? Multiple counts of child abuse and assault. Detective Harmon found 3 families willing to testify once they saw your evidence. Their kids finally felt safe enough to talk. And she got a warrant for the house. The basement evidence pretty much sealed it. What's the likely sentence? Her lawyer's going to argue for mental health intervention instead of prison, given her age. But even if she gets a treatment facility instead of jail, she'll be locked up for years and legally prohibited from contact with any minors for life. Luke watched Casey playing in the sandbox, his hair finally trimmed short enough to see both ears. The scar was still there, would always be there. But Casey was laughing at something, building elaborate castles with the single-minded focus only 6-year-olds possessed. Thanks for the update, Raymond. No problem. And Luke? What you did, some people might call it vigilante justice. Some people would be right. Well, those kids are safer because of you. Sometimes the system needs a push in the right direction. Raymond paused. Take care of your family. Always. That evening, after Casey was asleep, Luke and Elsa sat on the back porch with glasses of wine, watching fireflies drift across the yard. I heard from my mother's lawyer today, Elsa said quietly. She wants to see me. To apologize. Are you going to go? I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me never wants to see her again. She sipped her wine. Is that terrible? It's human. She's your mother, but she's also the person who hurt you and our son. You don't owe her anything. She said in the letter that she realizes now she was sick, that she needs help. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's manipulation. Either way, it doesn't change what she did. Luke put his arm around Elsa's shoulders. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But don't let her make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. Elsa leaned into him. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I just know what matters. He kissed the top of her head. You, Casey, this life we've built. Everything else is just noise. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the crickets and the distant sound of traffic. Inside the house, Casey's nightlight glowed softly in his window. Luke thought about the boy he'd been in Detroit, fighting in alleys and running from a future that seemed predetermined. He thought about the man he'd become. Father, husband, engineer. He'd believed he'd left violence behind when he left that city. But he'd learned something important. You don't leave violence behind. You just redirect it. Channel it toward protecting what you love. He'd done what needed doing. Casey was safe. Marguerite would face consequences. Other children were protected. It wasn't perfect justice. But in an imperfect world, it was enough. And as Luke sat on his porch with his wife beside him and his son sleeping safely upstairs, he felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. The next morning, Casey bounded into their bedroom at dawn, jumping on the bed with the enthusiasm only small children possess. Dad, can we go to the park? Please. Luke groaned, pulling a pillow over his face. It's Saturday, buddy. Saturday means sleeping in. But I want to go now. Elsa laughed, already sitting up. I'll take him. You deserve the rest after everything. But Luke was already getting up, ruffling Casey's hair. Nah, I'll go. You enjoy the quiet. At the park, Luke pushed Casey on the swings, higher and higher until Casey's squeals of delight filled the morning air. Other families arrived as the day warmed up, parents chasing toddlers, older kids claiming the jungle gym. A woman Luke vaguely recognized from the neighborhood approached, her daughter trailing behind. You're Luke McDowell, right? Casey's dad. That's me. She extended her hand. I'm Bethany Lyons. I wanted to thank you. My daughter Emma was one of the children Marguerite babysat. After we got your information, Emma finally told us what had been happening. We'd known something was wrong, but we couldn't get her to talk about it. Luke glanced at the little girl, who was now playing with Casey in the sandbox. Is she okay? Getting there. We have her in therapy now. The detective said there are 6 families total who came forward. You probably saved more kids from going through the same thing. Bethany's eyes were bright with tears. I don't know how to repay you for that. You don't need to repay me. Just make sure Emma gets whatever help she needs. After Bethany left, Luke watched the children play. 6 families. 6 kids who would have been Marguerite's next victims if he hadn't acted. The thought made him feel simultaneously sick and vindicated. His phone buzzed. A text from Detective Harmon. Need you to come in Monday for a formal statement. Bringing additional charges against Myers. Your evidence was the key. Luke replied, I'll be there. Casey ran over, sand coating his hands and knees. Dad, Emma says she has a scar too. She showed me. Did the same person hurt us? Luke's jaw tightened. Yeah, buddy. But she can't hurt anyone anymore. Good. Casey nodded seriously, then brightened. Can we get ice cream? Absolutely. Monday morning, Luke sat across from Detective Harmon in a small interview room at the Columbus Police Department. She was in her late 40s, sharp-eyed and professional. "Mr. McDowell, I want to start by saying what you did was both incredibly helpful and incredibly stupid." Luke suppressed a smile. "I've been told I have a talent for that combination. Breaking into a suspect's home, recording conversations, these things can compromise a case." "I know, but I also knew that without hard evidence, no one would believe a 6-year-old over a respected community member." Harmon leaned back in her chair. "Fair point. And frankly, your evidence package was more thorough than some of our detectives manage. Where do you learn investigation techniques?" "I have a friend who's a PI. He walked me through it." "Raymond Baker?" At Luke's surprised look, she smiled. "I do my homework too. Baker's got a good reputation. Bit unconventional, but solid." She pulled out a file. "We've now got 8 families willing to testify. All their stories match the patterns documented in Marguerite's journal. We're building a strong case." "What about Marguerite's lawyer?" "Already trying to negotiate a plea deal. They know they can't win at trial. We're pushing for maximum sentencing within mental health guidelines. She'll be institutionalized and monitored for the rest of her life." "That's not enough." "Maybe not, but it's what the system can give us." Harmon's expression softened. "How's your son doing?" "Nightmares. Anxiety. But he's talking about it now, which his therapist says is good. It's going to be a long process. It always is with trauma. But kids are resilient." She stood, extending her hand. "Thank you for bringing this to us, Mr. McDowell. Even if you did it in the most legally questionable way possible." Luke shook her hand. "I'd do it again." "I believe you would. Try not to, though. Let us handle the criminals from now on." "I'll do my best." 6 months passed. Spring turned to summer, then fall. Casey started 1st grade and joined soccer. His nightmares became less frequent, and he stopped flinching when Elsa reached for his hair. Marguerite's trial made the local news. The details of her discipline room shocked the community. People who'd known her for decades struggled to reconcile the woman they'd thought she was with the monster she'd turned out to be. She was sentenced to 12 years in a psychiatric correctional facility, with mandatory treatment and lifetime prohibition from contact with minors. Her house was sold, the proceeds divided among her victims' families for therapy and medical expenses. Elsa never went to see her. She wrote a victim impact statement that was read in court, detailing the abuse she'd endured as a child and the trauma her mother had inflicted on Casey. It was cathartic, she told Luke afterward, like finally purging poison from her system. On a Saturday morning in October, Luke was raking leaves when Raymond pulled up in his car. He got out holding a manila envelope. "Got something for you," Raymond said. "Wasn't sure if you'd want to see it, but figured I'd let you decide." Inside the envelope were newspaper clippings about Marguerite's sentencing, along with photos of her being led from the courthouse in handcuffs. She looked diminished, her perfect posture finally broken. "Also got word from a friend in the facility where she's being held," Raymond continued. "She's not doing well. Isolation mostly. None of the other inmates want anything to do with child abusers. Guards aren't particularly protective either." Luke studied the photos. He felt nothing, no satisfaction, no guilt, no triumph. Just a flat certainty that justice, imperfect as it was, had been served. "Thanks for the update. You okay with how it all turned out?" Luke looked back at his house, where Casey and Elsa were carving pumpkins on the porch, Casey's laughter carrying across the yard. "Yeah," he said. "I'm okay with it." After Raymond left, Luke joined his family on the porch. Casey had carved a wobbly jack-o'-lantern face and was immensely proud. "Look, Dad. It's smiling. It's perfect, buddy." Luke knelt beside him. "You know what? I think this is going to be a great Halloween." Casey hugged him fiercely, pumpkin guts and all. Over his son's head, Luke met Elsa's eyes. She smiled. A real smile, the kind that reached her eyes and spoke of healing and hope. That night, after Casey was asleep, Luke stood in his son's doorway watching him breathe. The scar on Casey's ear was visible above the blanket, a permanent reminder of what had been done to him. But scars healed, wounds closed, and monsters, eventually, were caged. Luke had been a different person when he'd lived in Detroit, harder, angrier, more willing to solve problems with his fists. He'd thought he'd left that person behind. But maybe you never really leave yourself behind. Maybe you just find better reasons to fight. He'd fought for Casey, for Elsa, for all the children Marguerite had hurt, and all the ones she would have hurt if left unchecked. And he'd won. It wasn't the kind of victory that came with parades or medals. It was quieter than that, measured in nightmares that gradually faded, in laughter that slowly returned, in a family that learned to feel safe again. Luke closed Casey's door softly and walked to the bedroom he shared with Elsa. She was already asleep, her face peaceful in the moonlight. He slipped into bed beside her, and for the first time in months, he slept without dreams of basements and surgical scissors and cold-eyed women who hurt children and called it discipline. He slept the sleep of someone who'd done what needed doing and could live with the consequences. And in the morning, he'd wake up and be a father again, a husband again, a man building a good life in a quiet neighborhood where monsters were supposed to be just stories parents told to scare children. But Luke knew better now. Monsters were real. And sometimes, when the system failed, ordinary people had to stop them. He had. And his son was safe. His family was healing. That was enough. That was everything. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.